So, what if I told you that one of the most common pieces of financial advice out there is just wrong? What if saving your money is actually one of the biggest mistakes you could be making? We're going to dive into this with a really powerful story, a parable from a grandfather that completely flips the script on how we think about wealth. Never save money. I know, it sounds completely backwards, right? Maybe even a little reckless. But this one sentence, this one idea, is the core of a lesson that can change everything. So let's find out why on earth a grandfather would give such shocking advice. All right, so our story kicks off in a small village, and it's about an old man. But this isn't some tale of ancient wisdom, at least not at first. We start with a man who was known for being idle, for living a life filled with these grand but totally unfulfilled plans. Yeah, pretty much everyone in the village called him the lazy one. He'd spend his entire day, every day, just sitting under a tree, lost in his thoughts, and talking about all the amazing things he was about to do. He promised a big shop, buying land, making a fortune, but they were just words. That one day he was always dreaming about, well, it just never seemed to arrive. And this went on for years, this cycle of empty talk and zero action. But a life that's built on daydreams is pretty fragile. And one night, a single, heartbreaking moment would come along and just shatter that world completely, forcing him to face the real cost of doing nothing. His young grandson came to him. He was barefoot, and he was hungry. And he just said, "Grandpa, I'm hungry." When his wife went to open the food cupboard, it was completely empty. There was absolutely nothing to give the child. And boom, in that moment, the full weight of his failure just came crashing down on him. All his big plans, all his daydreams, they were worthless. He finally understood with this painful clarity that you can't eat dreams. Thoughts don't fill an empty stomach. The shame must have been overwhelming. So, stung by this shame, and with a new sense of determination, the man actually went out and got a job as a laborer. But his earnings, they were tiny. It was a harsh reality check. And that's when he overheard what he thought was the secret to wealth, a piece of advice that set him on a new, but, as we'll see, an equally flawed path. The secret to getting rich, somebody said, is to save. It sounded so simple, right? So logical. This idea got stuck in his head. That very night, he found a big glass jar and hid it under his bed. He thought, this jar, this is going to be our family's salvation. Now, this slide really gets to the brutal reality of his new plan. On one side, you have the sacrifice. To fill that jar, his family went through so much. They went to bed hungry, their shoes were worn out, real hardship. But on the other side for him, there was this illusion. The sound of clinking coins, watching the jar slowly fill up, it gave him this false sense of security, that things were getting better. And so it went. Months rolled into years. Every single spare coin, earned through back-breaking work and his family's sacrifice, went into that jar. He watched it fill up, believing it was the key to a brighter tomorrow. And then, one day, it was completely full. His entire life savings were right there in that glass jar. He proudly walked that jar to the market, ready to buy 3 whole sacks of wheat to finally secure his family's future. He poured all the coins onto the shopkeeper's table. But the shopkeeper counted the money, looked up, and delivered a devastating blow with just a few words. Prices have gone up. And this chart just lays it out, plain and simple. All that sacrifice, all those years of saving, and what was the result? The money he thought would buy 3 sacks of wheat could now only buy 1.5. While his money was just sitting there, sleeping in a jar, the world kept moving. The value of his hard-earned savings had been cut in half by inflation. You can just imagine him walking home completely defeated, that heavy jar of coins now feeling totally worthless. His dream was shattered all over again. But, it's often in these moments of total despair that true clarity can strike, sparked by just a simple observation. He started watching his neighbors, really watching them. They weren't hiding jars of money under their beds. They were out there selling milk from their cow, eggs from their chickens. They had assets that were alive, things that were producing value every single day. They weren't living in fear, they were secure. And that's when it all clicked. He remembered his grandson innocently suggesting, "What if we buy chickens?" So he took his last few coins, not to hide them away, but to finally put them to work. He bought a few hens. And the plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Eat some eggs, sell the rest, and use that money to buy more chickens. He wasn't hoarding money anymore. He was creating a system that could actually grow. This small change in strategy, this profound shift, it didn't just fix his finances. It completely transformed his life and led to the powerful lesson he would pass on for generations. One day, standing there with his growing flock of chickens, he held up a single egg and he told his grandson, this one egg is more valuable than that entire jar of money ever was. What he was getting at was the incredible difference between a static asset and a productive one. So why was it more valuable? Well, for one, that egg could actually feed them. It could be sold to buy more chickens, which would create even more eggs. It was a living, growing system that didn't just sit there losing value. And through this process, the man everyone used to call lazy finally earned the respect of his village and, more importantly, of himself. See, without even knowing the word for it, he had stumbled upon the true secret: investing. He was putting his money to work, letting it grow and create more value for him, instead of just letting it sleep under the bed. And that brings us all the way back to that shocking piece of advice from the beginning: never save money. He finally understood what it really meant. It wasn't about being reckless. It meant don't let your money be idle. Don't just save it. Put it to work. Make it grow for you. This whole story leaves us with a really powerful question to ask ourselves. The glass jar today might be a savings account earning next to nothing. And the chickens, well, they can be anything that grows. Stocks, a small business you start, even a skill you learn to increase your own earning power. The principle is exactly the same. So the question for you is this: is your money sleeping in a jar, quietly losing its power to inflation? Or is it out there working for you?